another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Brayton, and today's guest is Debra Cerruti, speaking on the Bradley Method. Deb's knowledge and passion for all things birth-related began with the natural childbirth of her firstborn, Rebecca, in 1990. Becca's birth inspired her to become a certified Bradley Method natural childbirth educator and spread the word about birth's amazing possibilities and power. Deb had a son, Willem, in 1997 and soon thereafter became a D.O.N.A certified birth doula. She's guided and encouraged many couples on their own unique birthing adventures, both in the classroom and in the birthing room. Deb is also a registered yoga teacher with Yoga Alliance, teacher of calm birth meditation, birth photographer, and professional actress. She takes great pride in the way she can communicate and meet couples precisely where they are, then intelligently, sensitively, and with good humor guide them where they want to be. Welcome, Deb.
Thank you, Laura. Nice to be here.
I'm really excited to pick your brain and learn more about not only the Bradley Method and what this education delivers to the people attending your classes, but also to really learn why this education is so important for women and families that are wanting natural childbirth.
Right.
So please start off by telling me, what is the Bradley Method?
Well, the Bradley Method is a wonderfully thorough and informative curriculum of childbirth preparation. And it honors the very efficient natural process of birth, and it also invites dads, partners, to support the pregnant and laboring woman in a very real, and a customized way. Couples become knowledgeable, they become self-aware, they learn specific ways of dealing naturally with the stress of labor and birth, because it is like running a marathon, and relaxation through calm, steady, deep abdominal breathing is the key, and that's pretty much what we do when we sleep. So the couples and moms come in knowing so much at the start.
That's so important. So it really sounds like both partners are educated and then therefore able to work together as a team during pregnancy and birth.
Absolutely. And I mean, that was, Dr. Bradley brought those husbands into the delivery room, those dads, and now partners. And that makes it so much, it's never easy, but so much easier for mom to have that intimate personal support. It's essential.
That's awesome. So tell me, why did you become a Bradley Method educator after your first birth?
Well, I was totally empowered by the whole process of learning. I mean, I didn't know much about babies up to that point, until I got pregnant. And I basically thought that there was just, hospital-affiliated Lamaze classes to go to. And it was a friend that I kind of bumped into before I signed on the dotted line that told me about Bradley. And Bradley really spoke to me. I'm also a trained actress, and it taught me to tune in and to use my own breathing. And so, after learning about the whole process, I mean, we spoke about nutrition, exercise, open and clear communications, dad and mom, but then also team talking to our medical care providers, customized coaching, good consumerism. After, really learning what my choices were and then becoming empowered to actually speak what I wanted, So I went into the birth, first of all, knowing and therefore not feeling afraid. And so many people are afraid. So knowledge brings that power, that peace of mind, and that confidence and strength that you need in birth. So having taken the Bradley classes, I am being very committed to the natural process at that point. I just never wavered. And I understood that, when it got really tough, and that's when moms want to scream for drugs, etc. I knew that, and my husband knew that meant it was getting this tough because I'm almost ready to push the baby out. And so understanding that the toughest part of labor is the shortest part of labor ahead of time, and then when you're in the throes of it, being reminded of that, it allows you to see the light at the end of the tunnel. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I just, literally and figuratively, pushed on through, and then Becca was born. And then right afterwards, I was so, as she was, I was so alert and ready and elated and, of course, relieved. And she was alert and eager to nurse right away. And I felt proud. I felt empowered. I felt good. I wasn't drugged and with numb legs and with a kind of a logy baby on my hands, from hours of being medicated. I was really alert, as was the baby, and it just spoke volumes to me. I mean, it just brought me into the world of parenthood, but also in the world of I want to say the childbirthing world, and I realized how important it was for me to have that knowledge first in order to persevere and make it to the other side. And what a champion I felt like, when I ended up there.
That's a great story. So you really had that personal experience of being a student of the Bradley Method, having a very successful unmedicated birth with your first child and second child, and therefore getting inspired to want to teach this to others. Yeah,
very much so. But I've gotten more and more passionate and enthused and passionate as I go along, because I feel like, what is it, from 1996 to 2011, the C-section rate increased, drastically. And there's such a need, for people like you that believe in the natural process, for people like me who believe the same, to keep speaking and to keep sharing the news of it being the absolute safest and most joyful way to go. And I think the need for people like us is more important, more called for now than ever. So my enthusiasm hasn't flagged at all. If anything, it's increased.
Because there is a greater need, to your point. One point that I really also love that you shared immediately after giving birth, because it was unmedicated, really how you were able to have a very, I think in a lot of ways, a better experience postnatal with healing, recovery, certainly nursing, and having that emotional bonding connection with your baby, because there wasn't any drugs involved in the birth process. Yes, and that really makes such a difference.
It made such a difference. It's such an easy recovery. And, I just felt blessed. My sister actually came up to visit me like a couple of hours after the baby was born, and for some reason they wouldn't let her, this was 1990, so they wouldn't let her back into the room, so I just got up and went out and met her in the lobby, and she was like, what are you doing here? Expecting me to be, bedridden, and I was like, and I was just full of this excitement of what had just happened to me, and she was just stunned, first of all, that I just got up and kind of walked out there, and then, just hearing the story, like, fresh from the trenches, so to speak, was kind of fascinating for her. But that's how good I felt. And Becca, I was very lucky, because nursing is a learned experience, so not all babies come out, ready to nurse on your particular, nipple, so to speak. But for some reason, Becca also bonded immediately and latched on right away. And, there are all the hormones and everything after birth, but I couldn't help but, and of course, yes, I cried the drop of a hat at a sad movie or whatever, but I really felt like it was postpartum elation. And it may not be the same for everyone, but, and I think, that the natural way just really allowed me that gift.
Mm-hmm. That is a gift. I mean, that is Mother Nature at her finest. I mean, our bodies are creating these really intense hormones and neurotransmitters that help with pain relief during the labor, as well as that elation that you speak of that, is a biochemical reaction that was occurring in your body because there was an interference from medications that will interfere with that type of elation and biochemistry. And there's also a lot of research to show that babies that are exposed to Pitocin during labor will have a drastically higher difficulty with nursing. And like you mentioned, not all babies and moms are going to be able to nurse immediately and very easily, especially for a first-time mother who's never nursed before.
Absolutely.
Get to see women nursing and have and see how it works. However, there can be a lot more challenges with the nursing process when those types of drugs are used.
Right, so and the drugs used in an epidural as well, which are, cocaine-based, et cetera. Those really can make for a logy baby. One film that I show, and I assume you've seen it, but if not, you should check it out. It's only a 5-minute film, and it's actually a study that The Lancet did called Delivery Self-Attachment. Have you ever seen it?
I haven't.
It's 5 minutes, and basically you see, because we're mammals, right? So, and Dr. Bradley grew up at a Kansas dairy farm, and that's where he saw birth at first and really brought the mammalian experience back to us. But anyway, this little film, one baby, it's actually 3 babies, but the first baby is put on mom's belly, and we see the baby crawl to the breast. We see the end of the hour because the baby's been there for that hour, and self-attaches to the breast because that's what mammals do. And this is a baby who was not exposed to drugs throughout the labor and birth. The second baby doesn't do very well because the mom was exposed to drugs throughout. The baby is really kind of logy, kind of a little spacey, and even though mom helps, baby doesn't latch on. And then finally, the third is a baby after a C-section, and mom had only been exposed to the drugs for the short time that she had the surgery, and the baby does pretty well. Mm-hmm. So the amount of drugs the result basically is, be mindful that the amount of drugs, given to mom during labor does affect the baby. And Dr. Bradley always said that, no drug is proven safe for the unborn child. However, benefits outweigh the risks. If mom has to have a C-section, of course she needs her medications. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there may be a mom who, I always say my watch cry in class, and I say it probably ad nauseum. You need to stay well-nourished, well-hydrated, and well-rested. And you want to approach your labor and on your labor day be the same, well-nourished, well-hydrated, well-rested. Then you present as a healthy, low-risk person. You present yourself dehydrated, then you need the IV, and your temperature could be raised, and all these things. So it's mom's job, to stay that way, and then hopefully not be interfered with when you get there. Dr. Bradley used to say that he was like an obstetrical lifeguard, that he was there just watching and waiting in case something went wrong, but if not, he would just sit back and watch things go really well. But he wouldn't interfere, and that's so different today with the medical management that seems to be the watch cry, the routine today in most hospitals.
Yeah, there's really more fear-based type of decisions being made as opposed to Dr. Bradley's, philosophy of, certainly being aware, but not coming from a place of fear.
Right.
And really coming from a place of hope.
Right.
And that's a different place to come from.
And knowing, I mean, if you have information and you know what's going to happen during birth, that makes you so much less fearful. And I think, that's my role as a Bradley instructor is to teach moms and dads everything I know about childbirth so that they can find then what's comfortable for them in labor. But in the meantime, they've sort of thought about it all before. They've decided what matters to them. And I'm not invested in what ends up mattering to people. People can decide to do whatever they want as long as I have given them all the information that I have. And they make then informed decisions. And I do encourage my moms and dads to write birth plans, list of birth preferences so that even if it goes, no further than the couple themselves, they then have to make decisions about what matters to them and visualize the birth that they'd like to have. And then hopefully they can use it as a stepping stone in talking to their docs or to their midwives about things that matter. And then everybody gets on the same wavelength. And truly, if you have a caregiver that believes in natural childbirth and is philosophically aligned with you, you have so much better a chance of having the natural childbirth of your choice. If you're not talking to your caregivers and they're just saying, oh, right, we'll take care of that, chances are they're just going to follow their own agenda and you're not going to have much say. And I really feel that I want my moms and dads to be ever at source and never to be, to have the power taken away from them. Because you're not sick when you're pregnant and laboring. You're optimally healthy. Right. Your body's doing exactly what it was designed to do.
That's such a good point. So in the class, you cover things like how to write a birth plan and nutrition and different options during the birth.
Absolutely. We talk about exercise, and I teach them different exercises that are helpful to get their bodies ready for the marathon. We talk about they keep a log of what they eat and how much protein they're getting because 80 to 100 grams of protein is really what's desired so that they don't get sick and so the baby gets all, as well as a well-balanced diet, of fruits and vegetables, etc. So they log that, they keep track so that they're accountable. We talk about open and clear communications, as I mentioned, mom with dad, and then they to their birth team. Customized coaching, so that, they are couples and they know each other well, but you can always know someone better. And so, it's how does your best relax? What are the things that make her feel peaceful and open? Because, you want to be opening and feeling safe during the time of birth. And it can be whatever you come up with. And then, of course, I've talked about it throughout, that whole idea of being an intelligent consumer and knowing that you have choices and finally, feeling comfortable to exercise the choices. But we also learn about, the nuts and bolts. What is first stage labor, second stage labor, third stage labor? What are the variations? What are the real reasons, medical reasons for a C-section, and what are the myths? The myths being, women are old or women are, no, C-sections happen across all age groups. And, women can choose to have a C-section. Yeah, but most women don't. There's a study, 1,800 moms, one who had C-sections, one chose to have a C-section. So we talk about that. We talk about how to recover from a C-section if you're one of the people who medically needs to have a C-section, and to be grateful and to shift your perspective then. Taking the time that you need. I always say there's always time to take a moment to think about things, to talk about things, or in the event of finding you need a medical C-section or you have a medical need for one, take the time to hug each other, to breathe and to say, okay, this is still going to be the most beautiful birth ever, and you look for the first sights, the first sounds, the first feel of that child. And it can be wonderful, but you need to have a minute to breathe. We also, talk about how to, I give them birth scenarios, okay, I'm the laboring mom and this is happening, that's happening. And so what do I do now? And one of them, the mom is going very fast, how do you recognize that? And in the end, and ends up having the baby in the car. It's like, oh my God. Well, we talk about emergency childbirth. So what do you do if that happens? Okay, what don't you do? You don't pull on the cord. You don't do that. And it's fascinating because at least it does happen. Then I showed them this article from the paper. Baby born in parking lot at hospital. They were there. They couldn't get upstairs, and then there was a patrolman in the parking lot and helped, and they were praising him, and he said, Mother Nature was taking over no matter what I did. And I say, there's Dr. Bradley talking. You can't control it, unless there's a lot of time and you try to control it, but still ultimately you can't. And so my dads know what to do, in that event.
Yeah.
And then of course we talk about newborn, some newborn characteristics and procedures and what do you do when the baby gets home? So it's really, really very thorough. And then things come up
very
from the moms and dads. Huh?
Yeah, it sounds very comprehensive.
It is. And it's fun. I find that the classes, as I say, sometimes things come from the moms and dads. They may have read something or they may have an issue that turns the conversation elsewhere. And I'm happy to go on those tangents. And then always, of course, bring it back to topic. But it's amazing how much we learn one from the other, It's really fun.
Yeah, Deb, you had shared a story with me in the past about in one of your classes, a woman was describing how she had concerns with her birth provider, with the other other people in their class, and ended up switching birth providers because she felt empowered by attending that class and recognizing, I'm not on the same page with this provider, and that makes me uncomfortable that I'm going to be able to actually create the birth that I want. Right.
And there is a question I always ask. We go around, little round robin, and I say, okay, name 3 things you love about your medical team. And this particular person you were talking about couldn't name one. And so, she called me later and said, since I couldn't come up with one really great reason, I'm thinking about maybe changing. Is it too late? And I do forget how far along she was. But some people, they might have 3 weeks to go. It's never too late to change. That's not the point of the exercise necessarily, but the point is to see, am I with a group, with a doctor who I feel comfortable with, who I feel safe with, because, even the World Health Organization says that there is a 10 to 15% chance that you might need a C-section or something, there might be a variation in the natural, in your scenario. And you want to know that your caregiver will think the way you would think were you the professional at that particular point in time, and won't jump the gun, doing something, intervening, if you don't absolutely need it. And if you're with caregivers that you trust, that you've had conversations with, who spend time with you, you can then be more open and be more trusting on the big day.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And I think probably a lot of the families in your classes also might recognize that working with a midwife would have a philosophy better matched to natural childbirth than
there is the allopathic way and there is the midwifery way, and I do say to them, because I don't want to discourage moms that are with really good and open OBs, that it's not always absolutely one way or absolutely the other. We have midwives that are also somewhat clinical, and they need to be to take care of situations that may arise that aren't normal. And you've got allopathic doctors who may believe in your power. And I think that's the difference really between the two. The allopathic way, as Dr. Bradley knew and would say, I'm here to handle what goes wrong. I'm looking for the pathology. And that's what doctors are trained to do.
That's right.
But they're not necessarily trained to do what the midwives do, which is to believe in mom's power and to understand that moms can and should allow their bodies to work the way they've been designed to work. So the midwifery model, believes in mom's power and enhances that power. They believe that mom can do it. They don't try to save mom from the rigors, because you can't. It might look like mom is being saved if she's, had a narcotic and, is like looking peaceful, but inside she's fighting to get out of that fog. Not the same with an epidural, but with an epidural, epidurals can slow things down. You can feel kind of numb or itchy depending upon what's going on. It sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't work. So, and then there's, getting over it afterwards, and certainly with C-sections, which is like the ultimate, medical intervention, life-saving when needed. There's recovering from major abdominal surgery.
Right.
So if you can enhance mom's power and trust her and her body, it's so much easier a process. It may not be the greatest business model, and I think that's why things have kind of become what they've become, because it's a lot easier to schedule somebody to come in and do a half-hour surgery than to allow the baby to come, sometimes beginning in the middle of the night, and honoring mom with the freedom to allow the baby to move through and then to ultimately leave her body as it was intended. It takes a lot more time.
Yeah, and, there's a lot of variation in nature, so it is also, respecting that, normal can look a lot of different ways, but will always look different than that pathological. And so the birth provider, whether it's a midwife or an OB, can recognize those pathological signs, and then that's when the interventions are needed, but not Absolutely. For a normal variation.
That's right. And, being on the external fetal monitor for hours and hours, not only does that, expose the baby to ultrasound, which we hope doesn't hurt the baby, but it it does expose the baby to, ultrasound waves, et cetera. And all those pages of printout, there might be a little something here, something there. And sometimes caregivers are very aggressive. And so many more C-sections are done when moms are on the external monitor for long periods of time. And at the same time, mom is not given the freedom to move around because she's tied to
Right.
this machine, which is not comfortable and which doesn't encourage mom to kind of move with her body, do that kind of birth dance and stretch and lean and move in and out of the shower or the tub. You feel bound or constricted if you have to be on it, continuously. And so many vaginal exams that are done these days. I encourage my moms. We talk about vaginal exams, and yes, that determines clinically, how many centimeters dilated, how far phased, its station, presentation. But there's so much behavioral and information that you're getting as you go along that tells you where mom is, how far apart are the contractions, can mom talk through the contraction or not talk through the contraction, and so there's the vaginal exams that are important. When you get to the hospital, should you be there? Should you stay? If you're not very far dilated and you look like you're not working like super, super hard, go home. You're much more comfortable at home. Do consider traffic, et cetera, all that fits in. So is there a park nearby? Is there a hotel nearby? Just not being on the clock at the hospital if you don't need to be is great. So that first vaginal exam is kind of important just to determine, do I stay or don't I stay? And then all of the other ones up until you're feeling the urge to push are just, how fast are you going? And if mom is fine, healthy, no rise in blood pressure, et cetera, if baby's fine, doing really well, through the contractions, et cetera, there's no need to change protocol. You don't need to know how far open mom is or how far dilated. That only stops her flow. And then finally, when mom, and that also causes a lot of the, oh, she's only this much for this, and mom gets discouraged, dad gets discouraged, and that's where the labor augmentation comes in, and mom's fine, baby's fine. And I say, you don't want to be interfered with because you don't want to have to lie down and have somebody, do the vaginal exam. But you don't want to hear if you haven't progressed really far because it's discouraging. And in Bradley, we talk about something called the natural alignment plateau. And I tell moms and dads, don't bandy this around the hospital because I don't think it's a technical term. We've determined this. But what we're pointing out here is a time in labor or a phenomenon that often happens. I see it a lot as a birth doula, where mom might be 2 centimeters dilated and can very quickly go to 10 centimeters. And so the natural alignment plateau is when mom is 2 centimeters or 4 centimeters, and if she were being checked vaginally via exam, she would, still be 4 centimeters 2 hours later, still be 4 centimeters 4 hours later, still be 4. And if you're hearing that, you're thinking, oh my God, I'm not progressing. A lot of C-sections are done for failure to progress. And basically this is just, the dilation plateauing, but mom's still contracting. Everything from the outside is perfectly fine. And it causes interference when there's no need. So not having the information that the vaginal exam gives you during that normal course of labor can be very helpful in not throwing, alarm flashes in the air, both to the medical people and fear and concern in the air for mom and dad. The other time that I say a vaginal exam, might be important is at the end when mom feels the urge to push. Okay, check then, because mom's obviously in a different place, and we want to make sure that she's fully 10 centimeters and that there's no lip on the cervix, et cetera, and she can freely kind of get on board and give those big pushes if she feels inclined to do that. We want to make sure it's safe to do that. But other than those 2 vaginal exams, if mom's fine, often that just can cause undue and unnecessary concern. And there's even times with midwives that they don't even need to do that during labor. Oh, exactly. Like at home births. Well, not even. Oh, home birth, exactly. Home births especially because they don't have to have that even midwives today, they want that initial printout, when mom comes, so that they have paperwork. We live in a litigious society, I know. But at home, I was at a home birth of a person, now a friend, who said she didn't want to know anything and, just wanted to follow her natural impulses. And she did. And it was fascinating because the midwife had just gotten there pretty much. I was working with her beforehand as birth doula, and she'd just gotten in the tub. And the midwife went into the bathroom. She made a few sounds, just said, oh, and the baby came out, and the assistant midwife was there to catch, because she asked, not to have that. She just wanted the baby to kind of leave her body, and when the baby was ready, and nobody even knew it was going to happen. It just happened right then and there. So that's right, and that's actually so helpful. It gets the mom's conscious mind out of the way, which can really interfere with the birth process. Absolutely. And you know what else interferes? I guess I saw something recently. Too much of that counting and at the end when it's like, okay, you can do it, count. And they always count to the count of 10. And Penny Simpkins always says that that's really prolonged pushing because most moms can't hold their breath to the count of 10. And the caregivers are watching the vagina and the birth canal, and they're watching the baby descend, a couple of steps and then maybe move back. And they're like, oh, keep it up because they want to see the baby's head keep coming forward. But they're not noticing, like I am and Dad is, that mom is like turning blue because she can't hold her breath any longer. And so I'm always there to say, take a breath when you need it, honey. Take a breath when you need it. Yeah. Or they're saying, okay, take a breath, hold. And this poor mom hasn't had a minute to grab the breath. So they're asking her to hold a breath that isn't even there yet. Yeah. And I have to say, it's okay. Just open let your jaw drop, take the breath in. You can do it on the next contraction. We're not in a rush here.
Yeah.
Wow,
what a good point. Holding your breath is just like not going to be productive during birth.
Is not what?
Not productive.
Well, it can be if you're getting behind it and you want to give it that final little, where that's the only time in labor that you would want to hold it. But you don't want to hold it for too long. Here's what Bradley teaches. Hold your breath as long as comfortable. Mm-hmm. And push as long as comfortable. Don't, come on, do it some more. Keep pushing, keep holding. No. If the contraction is gone and you need to lean back and allow that breath to move in, soften your cheeks, soften your jaw. So you're not blowing blood vessels in your eyes and your cheeks, which can happen to women who are so anxious to do the right thing and they're pushing, but they don't take a minute to just sit back and go, oh, there's all the air I need. And then
this is what feels right for my body. I'm not going to follow a protocol that's, generalized for all women.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because it is really great. In March 2014, ACOG put out some different recommendations. And in trying to encourage, seeing that there's too many C-sections and trying to encourage not jumping to that first, primary C-section. And what they basically did is they said, there's a whole list of things, but basically give mom more time. Don't rush her. Don't rush the first stage. Don't rush pushing. The protocol that they were following hails back to the 50s when this Dr. Friedman decided that he'd like to sort of chart, how a woman on average progresses, how many centimeters an hour, blah, 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 and went to the But they hold women, or had been holding women to this as if it were an absolute. And as you said, Laura, every woman is different. Every body is different. Every labor is
every
different.
Every birth is different.
Every birth is different. And I am happy to know that at least, the American College of OBs and GYNs are on top of it and seeing that something has to shift. And I think that that new set of recommendations is a real plus and enhances then our ability and mom's ability to actually birth in her own time.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
It's not fixed.
Yeah, it's not fixed, but it sounds like there's movement in the right direction.
Yeah, and we just hope it goes that way and that caregivers will adhere to those, recommendations and not rush.
Right.
I really hate hearing some, moms, especially moms who are not my students, because we've talked about a lot of this, but, worried because their caregiver, is concerned the day after their due date that they're overdue. That's not overdue.
That's not true.
Right? There's 3 weeks before, 2 weeks after, and moms could probably go even beyond that 2 weeks, but they're trying to,
it's estimated due date.
Exactly. At best, it's the estimated due date. And being held to that is crazy. Or this whole idea of these, bioprofiles that they do now via, ultrasonic scan, how much measuring in centimeters, how much water is there. I'm always saying, if you go for one of those, drink a lot of water before you go, because you're always making water, right. And then it won't look like you have, not enough amniotic fluid, so
right.
You kind of have to work with what we're
Stay
forced
hydrated.
to contend with, or do home birth,
I would love for you to share with us about, Dr. Bradley coined the term husband-coached childbirth, and you had mentioned earlier that he was a big proponent for bringing dads into the delivery room. Can you share more about that and what, when this started and what it looks like?
Sure. Well, Dr. Bradley, I think, started his training he grew up on a Kansas dairy farm, as I said before, so he really saw birth in its most natural state. And then when he started his training, he was shocked because this was like the late 40s, 50s, and women were being drugged. They had twilight sleep and general anesthesia, and they would put, football helmets on moms and put them in cribs because she would like thrash around, feeling the rigors of this drug that she was given. And he was like, what is wrong with this picture? And so he started talking to people about the natural process. This is how the animals do, blah, blah, blah. And then he trained a whole group of nurses who were having babies, and they had a tremendous, a wonderful outcome, of actually using his natural process that's been around for centuries and centuries. But he also noticed that the nurses would, praise him and hug him and, oh, you are the most wonderful. He's like, I shouldn't be here getting all this praise. Where's their husbands? Where are their mates? And so he started but he realized the value of having that constant support and that the person that believed in your power. So he said, who better to not only do that for mom, but also to be present at the birth of their child than the dads. And of course, so he calls it husband coach childbirth, coming from the old-fashioned way. Not all dads are husbands, and not all partners are dads. So in this day and age, I sort of amended to be partner, coached childbirth. Yeah. But it's the same idea, having somebody who loves you and who champions you and who's there to massage and to get you what you need and to tell you, how great you're doing and to feel that pride, and also just to give you the massage that he knows works and will help you relax. Say the words that he knows or she knows works to trigger you to release and open. Who better than the person who is your intimate other, to be witness and to be guide.
Yeah, so beautiful. So this was in the 50s that he was... Yeah,
he started doing his, bringing his natural way into the birthing room. And so the way the whole curriculum and school, the American Academy of Husband Coach Childbirth is what it's called, developed was that he was working in Denver because that's where his practice was, and having great success. And he was asked to write a book, and that's when in 1965 he wrote Husband Coach Childbirth. And he would go on lecture tours, and one of them ended up in California. And there was a couple, Margie and Jay Hathaway, who had a few children already, and, in the medical way, and they were hearing this lecture, and they kept asking questions, but how can you do it without drugs? And they were fascinated and intrigued by this because they didn't enjoy birth is birth, and you're so grateful for having a child, but it was hard, and they were fascinated by the idea of having a more natural and an easier, in the long run, birth. So they said, can we come to Denver? And he said, well, if you come like 6 weeks before, well, I'm not sure if I can. But long story short, she basically went into labor or was told that she was going to have the baby within a day or so, and said, it's now or never. And I believe she had 3 kids, and they had 3 kids, and they jumped on a plane, and they went to Denver. And they had the most beautiful, interfered with childbirth. And they were just enthralled. Of course, they're Irish Catholics, so they were going to have more kids. He said, you can't fly to Denver every time you have a child. So what should we do? And so they, Dr. Bradley and the Hathaways, joined together and created an actual Bradley Method curriculum. A lot of what I've spoken about before, what's included. And the first teacher training, I think, was done in 1970. And the rest is pretty much history. But the weird thing is, I had a baby in 1990, and I hadn't heard about it. I mean, I had read a little bit about, I guess, in What to Expect When Expecting, but didn't focus on it because I didn't think it was available to me as a viable method. And, it was in the hands of moms and dads who were too busy working and taking care of kids to really be out there being advertised. And thank goodness for, I sort of it's a double-edged sword, the whole, technology thing. I'm not great with it, as you know. But it's a really fabulous thing that we can just get online. What is the Bradley Method? And everybody knows that it's a choice. Had I not bumped into a chiropractic care at a mom chiropractor who caught me before I signed on the dotted line for Lamaze, I wouldn't have known that it was viable. And she showed me the workbook, and I was like, whoa, this is for me. But now with the Internet, it's much easier to find out about it, along with all the other childbirthing options. And, of course, moms have and dads have the information, so choose what feels right for you. And then we can, find teachers that way, which is really
right. That's such a good point. Like the Internet's really opened up that world to find out about these different options.
It really
that were a little bit harder.
It was harder. It was because I didn't even know it existed. And I had somebody in my first class when I taught, because I've been teaching now since 1994. And he was second marriage. He had children 20 years prior, the Bradley Method. And here he was with another wife going through it again. He said, why over these 20 years haven't more people found out about this? Yeah. And now we're lucky enough. It's out there. There are YouTube videos. There's all kinds of things. And I'm so happy. Word of mouth still, I think, is most powerful. But the information is there. And, that's one good thing about the whole technological world.
Yeah, such a good point. How can a woman find a local Bradley Method educator in her area?
Well, they would go on to, in the area, they can call me. And of course, I have a website on the Bradley site, and I'll give you their site, which is www.bradleybirth.com. And they would just put in their town, their state, and or their zip code, and I would come up, and other teachers in the area would come up. Or they can call.
So that would be for Hudson County.
I teach in Hudson County. As you know, I taught in Hoboken for a while, till my and in Jersey City. My mom has a really beautiful and large apartment, and so I'm allowed to, teach there, and she loves me coming over. And it's a great space. We're always encouraged to teach not in a hospital affiliated location, just so that we can be as open and as we don't have to kind of talk about the routines there, So I teach in Jersey City in my mom's home, and I also teach in Caldwell. There's it's the home of the Avalon Midwives, and even though we're not connected, we support each other, and so I use their space on a Sunday afternoon teaching my classes. And It's interesting because really some people from your neck of the woods, Hoboken, Jersey City, come out there because they're more alert and not as tired as they are sometimes during the week. So and it's about a half hour west. So for some people it works. Other people like doing it after work and having it a little closer by. I also sometimes will teach in the last class I taught in Jersey City. 3 of the couples live downtown, so they said, would you, if we opened up our apartment, would you be interested in teaching down there? So we just switched it, and, I'm sort of have wheelie backpack, will travel. We just went down there, and it worked fine. So, it's each class is unique, each person, and I just try to, roll with those kind of suggestions and needs and desires.
Right. Okay, so just to reiterate that, a woman would go to bradleybirth.com, put in her zip code, state, or city, and local educators would pop up, and she would be able to find out where and when their classes are being held.
Absolutely. She can also telephone if she wants, and it's 1-800, the number 4, the letter A, and then birth, B-I-R-T-H. So 1-800-4A-BIRTH is also the number that can be called if she wants to talk to someone, in person. So come take the Bradley Method. It's a great way to go.
Yeah. That's kind of like I was going to ask, any last thoughts? It's really about if you're really considering a natural childbirth, it sounds like taking the time to find the Bradley Method Educator is really well worth the time and financial investment.
It so is. And I just want to say also, even if you're thinking, oh, I might have the epidural, that's fine. I'm not invested. Other Bradley teachers aren't invested. What you ultimately decide, and you might have a real need if you've had 3 days of prodromal labor and you're exhausted. So don't be discouraged thinking, oh, if I don't, sign on the dotted lines, I have no drugs. The Bradley Method isn't for me. It's for all of the things I mentioned, and what you ultimately decide is totally your choice. And I just want you to feel confident and comfortable exercising that choice, however you choose to birth.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Deb, because this isn't about judgment. This isn't like, oh, if you do need an intervention, then you failed. It's really just being
Absolutely
really educated and empowered going into your birth, so you're making very conscious choices, and regardless of what those choices are, it's coming more from a place of education as opposed to a place of fear.
And yes, exactly, and from your own authentic self.
Right.
What really matters to me, what does my gut say here?
Yeah.
Real important.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.